People who don't understand the industry need to understand that if they get this wrong, they're dealing with patients. People who invent products, they could kill their company dead in seconds just because of bad reputation. The regulation's changing on an ongoing basis, not just from the regulation, but from the standards changing on an ongoing basis. That has a massive impact on innovation. We need to look at it and think, are changes that regulators making going to have an impact on patient safety, or is it just a case we have to make the change? We have to look at it and say, does this change make it safer, or is it just a change for the sake of change?
Today, we're talking about something that affects every medtech company, from the smallest startup to the biggest manufacturer. Without clear and fair regulation, innovation in healthcare can't move forward safely or efficiently. Joining me is Edwin Lindsay, Principal Consultant at CHS Life Sciences, who has over 20 years of experience helping companies bring medical devices and diagnostics to market. He's worked across the life sciences and IVD sectors and has even advised the UK government on healthcare policy and exports. We'll be breaking down what's really happening in the world of medtech regulation, what's changing, what's working, and what still needs to improve. Edwin, for those who are not familiar with the industry, why is regulation such an important part of medtech?
People who don't understand the industry need to understand that if they get this wrong, they're dealing with patients, dealing with people like me and yourself, treating people, and if they don't understand and get this right, there could be consequences, not just injury to patients, death, but also for the company. So, a number of investors, people who are looking to bring the products to market, people who invent products, they don't understand that if they get it wrong, it's not just patient safety, patient and the kind of injury or death or whatever, it's also to do with their company. They could kill their company dead in seconds just because of bad reputation. They need to understand that they need to build up trust in the medical device industry. If they don't build up trust, they're not going to be selling their devices, even though it might be the best. If they don't get it right at the start, then they're not going to move forward. They're not going to gain the confidence to get it into marketplace, get clinicians, patients using it. If it's understanding that it's not just a consumer device, it's not just an iPhone or a phone that's out there, it's all to do with trust, and it's dealing with patients. And what I tell most people who have not been in the industry, think it could be used on your mother, your father, your son.
Absolutely.
And you don't actually see it until maybe somebody dies, and then they find out it's your device, and you go, and it comes out, but you've not known it was your mother you killed. So that's a worst extreme example, but it's that type of thing. You could injure people who you actually know. So it's people look at, we need to get to market. We can make lots of money, but you need to get it right and understand what's behind it. And it leads to even legal cases. And that's the bit where if they don't get it right, then it's going to be consequences for them, not just, as I say, for loss of money, but it's trust. They won't be able to maybe come back into the medical device environment, but also legal aspects like recalls, company closure, no investment. It could be a number of different things, but they need to understand medical devices is not easy. It's not just a case of show up, develop a product and put it on the marketplace.
For sure. And talking about regulated markets, as we all know, things have changed a lot in the UK since Brexit. How do you think this affected medtech companies trying to get their products approved or on the market?
At the moment, it's moving slowly. The MHRA are making decisions as they move on with regards to, they're still accepting the CE mark, which means if you still have the CE mark, you can still come into the UK, but you need an authorised representative, which means that it's an additional cost for people who are companies out with the UK. So it might not be a lot, but it's still an extra cost. It also helps if you don't have the CE mark, then you've got a choice. Do you want to do CE mark under MDR, which is a bit more stringent because UK still follow the old kind of European regulations at the moment, what would have been the MDD and the IVDD, but what they can do is bring the product to market under these regulations. IVD is a bit more simpler because there's a lot of device products that are still self-declared. And that was one of the main reasons they flipped to IVDR, because a lot of them now went from self-declared to approved by regulators. In the UK, they have got approved bodies, but they're limited. Their scopes are limited, so there's backlogs. But one of the downsides if you go for UKCA is you can only sell it in mainland UK. You can't go to Northern Ireland because they fall under the European aspects of it
Yes.
all. So you're only really selling in that small environment of the UK. You then have to. You've got the kind of area where you've got the NHS trying to sell into that and trying to get into that. Some of the companies we work with are not interested in the UK because of the additional burden of regulations, costs. They need another budget. If they've not got C marking already, it's another budget. They need to come in and go, right, is it UK, is it EU? If the UK don't align and say, right, we'll accept C marking, then there could be potential issues. Because we act as UK rep for maybe over 30, 40 companies. A number of them have said they will pull out of the UK if there's additional costs put onto them because of the sales, the way into the NHS, the reimbursement, and just the time to take there. It won't be feasible for them. So they've said, right, they will make a decision once the MHRA have made a decision. Hopefully, up to 2030, they're accepting the C mark. After that, we'll wait and see. But it could have a massive impact because never mind about what's selling, it's the regulatory cost that could be added to it, which is going to make people's decision. It's going to come down to cost and what the next steps are for them. But at the moment, it's fairly open. It's only the new companies that have got a decision or new products. If it's not C-marked, then they have to come UK. They've got a choice, and some say no, we'll just wait until we get the C-mark. Or we'll go to the US first because it's less expensive. We can at least talk to the FDA through other aspects. So there is some complications. It is a way in because, as I say, there is some approved bodies, but it just takes time. But people are now looking at it's an extra cost if they have to do it. So.
And still in the UK, what's the actual impact on startups and smaller companies?
It depends on the classification. If it's class 1, not a lot. If it's a higher classification.
What are the biggest challenges they face?
The regulatory bodies, the lack of regulatory bodies. If they stay in the UK because maybe MDR, they need to do a full clinical trial, that's the cost that they have to look at. Before they could have easily done both. But now with MDD, they still look at the old process, but this is limited to where they can sell. They may use that as a test bed. They may use that as a way in to gather data that they can use for Europe. They've got various options, but as I say, innovation is there. It's still it's harder in the whole world just now, just because of the changing regulations and people adding the regulations changing on an ongoing basis, not just from the regulation, but from the standards changing on an ongoing basis. That has a massive impact on innovation, and I think that is as people who are doing regulations.
How can they prepare themselves better?
How to stay on top of it. Always get. I think a lot of startups are very wary of getting regulatory advice ongoing or bringing regulatory, because it costs extra money, is use people who have been involved as like a sanity check. Just somebody that's maybe there to bounce off, gather information, ask questions. If they don't do that, they're going to run into issues, massive issues. So we work with a lot of companies that we're there for 1 hour a month, 2 hours a month, just to be there as a sounding block. They've got questions. So that it's not a massive outlay for them, but at least it's guiding them when they've got questions. They can understand what's happening, and they're not making mistakes. Or at least if they're trying something, they say, what will happen if we do this? What will happen if we do that? And that's the understanding, is they have to have the trust in either a consultant or an advisor that they can then use, but not there to. The biggest thing I say is they need people who will help them make decisions, not give them options. These startups need people who will make decisions for them, or at least give them what the decision should be and why. Because if they give them options, what was the point in coming and talk to a consultant, an advisor? Because they need they need the answers, and I would say that's one of the biggest things that will help them through the early stages, getting it right, is getting somebody on board that will make decisions for them or help them make that decision. Because most startups don't understand regulations.
They don't?
They know that they look at maybe ChatGPT, they'll Google it, and a lot of them will start to read it, but it's very hard to really kind of interpretate that. They can spit it out from ChatGPT or using an AI system, can give you a rough overview, but is it right? Because it's scraping the web. But so we've seen a number of companies doing it this way, and then they've come full of it because of the information they've gathered is not quite right, and they've went ahead and then they've tried to get approvals and it's went under, or they've had to redo testing because they've not understood it. And then they don't actually look at the whole process, like EU, UK, wherever they're going in the world,
Yes.
a roadmap and understanding the road to market.
Which leads to my next question. Let's say a company wants to sell its medical device in different parts of the world, UK, EU, or the US. How hard is it to manage that today? And are we getting closer to having a more unified global system, in your opinion?
I'll probably start with the last bit. It's getting more aligned from the high-level ISO standards. So the standards that you have to meet, a lot of the countries are using the same ISO standards, like risk management, sterilisation, biocompatibility. They're all using the same type of standards, which is good because you can understand. It's more around understanding your regulatory roadmap, where you're going to want to go, whether it's year 1, 3, 5, and getting an idea. Okay, things do change, but it's getting the core of it and understanding, is there any country variations? Is there anything specific you need for that country? Some of it will be different cyber rules, different kind of clinical aspects. Is the clinical pathway the same that you're going to be going into? They're probably, it's around some of the testing, biocompatibility, that kind of development, V&V type testing, you can develop and you can look at the standards, but you're really looking at what is the country specifics. Is there anything different that you're doing that you have to build into your roadmap early, that you can maybe align, that the testing may be done quicker, but maybe cost you maybe slightly more money, but you've done them all. You've done the markets you want to launch in, rather than doing it for just the EU and then find out the US has got something different, or China, Japan have got an extra requirement, and the biggest risk is having to maybe go back and redo that testing, which is another huge cost. To be looking at the variation, say, well, it's going to cost me maybe an extra couple of $1,000 to then do it next, to do that as you're doing the work, rather than go back and it's like $50,000 again.
Yes.
So it's thinking of where we're going and what are the country variations, understanding the market, and is there any, but not just regulations. When you're selling into hospitals, you're selling into practices, is there anything specific in these countries that they're going to ask for? Big ones around the software as a medical device, the digital, and the cyber aspect, interoperability, etc. It's all around how do you manage that, and as every country,
Yes.
hospitals have got different ways of doing it as well.
Yes.
And every country, every hospital could have a different way. So it's trying to gather as much information as you can early on, doing your homework and saying, right, where are we going? What's our roadmap, and where are we going to sell this product? Because that's going to be key to reduce costs and to get to market quicker.
And in your opinion, what markets would you say are the easiest and the hardest to enter in that perspective?
I wouldn't say there's none easy. Depending on the classification. If it's class 1, it's self-declared, you're in control. You put the onus on the company to say that we meet the regulations. The only time you would ever be asked for your technical file, your technical documentation, is if the competent authority or the FDA, if it's exempt from approvals, because you're in control. They're probably more straightforward, because you're in control of that. If you go to countries or wherever where it's needing to be approved or cleared, then you're in the hands of God, really, because you're really working with the regulators to get approval. You can only judge till you get submissions and then you get feedback. EU's a bit more complicated because of the new rules. They're learning, there's changes happening all the time. We're seeing a lot of our clients going to the US first, just to start gathering data, real world clinical data, because, and it depends where they are in the world and how much budgets they have, much funding they have.
Absolutely.
Because I would go back to the start of it all and say, what are your key claims? What's your clinical? And clinical is king just now, because people want to know, is it being used clinically? Or it's okay doing all the testing, that's okay. But what clinical data have you got? That's potentially why the 510K process is more straightforward, but it's going to be still harder because you don't have clinical data. And then it's maybe planning for maybe doing small registries in the US, getting key opinion leaders, same in the EU, looking at the regulatory burden. But clinical is key for all this processes and how fast you can move to market. I think regulators will start looking for more and more clinical. That's what's happening in Europe, around the post-market, ongoing clinical follow-up. And companies aren't budgeting for this because it's not just a one-off now, it's a forevermore type process, which companies are finding hard now budgeting for, because every year, depending on the class, it could be 1, 2 or 3 years, 5 years, they have to collect clinical data. In the past, it doesn't have to do that. you don't have to do it in other countries where you have to collect clinical data. So Europe kind of goes, oh, that's a lot of money, especially when you get into market. So the US doesn't need that clinical data ongoing, but you would need it for marketing, selling, and also due diligence, and some of the big corporates who want to come and acquire you, because most people will go into this to be acquired. They're not there to build the kind of billion-dollar company. They're there to get to a certain level and hope they be acquired, sell out, and maybe start again. But it's that they need to get clinical data. Whether they sell it or whether they give it away and build a database, they have to look at clinical data. And we tell most of our clients, look for clinical data.
And what system that balances innovation with patient safety you'd like to see in the future?
Regulators maybe being more open and it's not just a tick box exercise. A lot of this is a lot of people go down the tick box exercise. We need to be more pragmatic. Is it a new novel device versus a kind of legacy device that's needed for operating the surgery, like a single-use scalpel? I don't know how you collect clinical data on that in Europe. It cuts or it doesn't cut. It's using a bit of kind of common sense and saying, right, yes, well, if people are buying it and it's not like novel, it's not life-threatening, but it's used, and you'll get feedback on it. It's really looking at the system and how do we make it pragmatic and a bit of common sense. It's probably going back the way and saying, right, where have we made mistakes under MDR? Where have we made, and look at other countries, Europe especially, but other countries, look at how do we improve to get products to market, still keep them safe, but keep them cost effective. We are not dealing in drugs, so that it's where they've got lots of money, they've got endless pots of money, they can sell it and they get reimbursed. You're looking at devices that are simple, cheap, and a couple of bucks. You're making it for $1 or $2 as well, so it's not a lot compared to a drug. I think we can't compare both, but we need to make sure they're safe. And it's building a system where there's a bit of common sense, but we also, even though I'm involved with regulatory all day, every day of the year, we need to look at it and think, are changes that regulators making going to have an impact on patient safety, or is it just a case we have to make the change? We have to look at it and say, does this change make it safer, or is it just a change for the sake of change? And what impact does that have, not just in startups, but all companies, from the one-man band right through to the multinationals? They're all looking at regulation, they're all looking at cost, but we need to look at a system where if we don't get it right and the products start getting removed from the market, or we kill innovation because of we're not doing it with a bit of common sense as well, but still ensuring patient safety, we'll start actually harming patients because there's no devices there. It will be a counter-reactive, as in we won't be able to have patients. We see products coming off the market now because of this, and it's having an impact on hospitals. You might have the fancy implant, but you've got no utensils to actually do the implant. So it goes back to the pre-1900s, where they're going into the kind of, they've got the tools out their toolbox and they sterilise them. That's my worry, is regulations can stop innovation, but we need to get it a fine balance without just making changes for the sake of change. I know we're due for a review after 5 years, and we make changes but actually we need to think, if we don't do it, what's the reason? Okay, we don't need to make the change. There is no issues. We just kind of move on. But I think too many people want to make a change because it makes it look like they're making them safe. We look at it we're all preaching about risk management and risk-based approach. As regulators, we need to do that more from a regulation point of view without compromising patient safety. If there's issues, deal with them. If there's no issues, why change a regulation if it's working and it's safe and people are working to it? Because one, it just brings extra revenue, burden on costs, resource, and it could affect the whole aspect of the downstream. We'll take the product off the market, it's not worth it anymore. That is a negative effect, and I think we need to think of that as, what are the changes? Because you've got the big companies, the big corporates who can absorb these costs, but there'll come a point where they won't be able to absorb it because there's that many changes coming through. They will start looking at devices and saying, is it worth it or not, and take that
definitely
off. So that's the worry. As I say, it's more of a kind of common sense, general approach to it. Is patient safety is not just a device. If the device is not there, we're affecting patient safety.
Absolutely.
And if technology moves on, if we kill innovation, we're not going to be people are going to start not being treated.
For sure. Edwin, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.